from the farm once again with a pop-in. If you've been following along at home, you've known that instead of inviting our friends into the store in the guise of social distancing, we started inviting our friends to these digital spaces where we could have conversations about some of the best products in cannabis, and we can do it safely in a socially distanced way. And today, no different. We are inviting back our friends from Ripple to talk about the science behind the magic, and we got their real-life mad scientist, actually we're going to call him the happy scientist, the happy scientician, Drew from Ripple. Drew, welcome aboard, and thanks for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Tony. Always happy to kind of help spread the information about our products and help everyone be educated on the scientific side of things.
Yeah, and we had a great conversation a few weeks ago with Nikki. Actually, I think the very first pop-in that we did was with Nikki and your team. So this is a really nice way to kind of piggyback on what we talked about before and really kind of dig into what makes Ripple so special. And I want to get into that in a second, but first I want to kind of get a feeling for you. How did you get into cannabis, and what were you doing before you started formulating all these great products for Ripple?
Yeah, sure. Good question. For me, I kind of had an interesting route. I feel like the cannabis industry as a whole is one of those things. You can be very interesting, but it's kind of hard to get your foot in the door, if you will. So for me, I was pretty fortunate. In my previous job, I was technical support for a really large food ingredient supplier.
Okay.
And I covered Colorado and a couple other territories. And through that experience, I got to meet Keith and Justin over here at Stillwater making the Ripple products back in the early days, before Ripple really is the form that it is now. So it's super cool when I remember visiting them and kind of provide some technical guidance on what ingredients can potentially make these type of products possible. And it was really just Keith and Justin in the back, just kind of making things happen. And I remember visiting them and thinking, oh man, like if these guys can make this work, like they're onto something big here. And checked in with them every few months, kind of as my job needed to. And then over time, just continue to see the things progress and progress, and end up with this awesome product, Ripple, just being able to be added to everything. And as the business expanded, I ended up reaching out at a certain point, like, hey, like, I know you probably need some help here at some point. Like, are you interested in having me come on board? And so I've been with the company a little over a year and a half since then. It's wild to see how things have progressed since then.
And it's been really cool for me, kind of on the periphery and the sidelines, as someone that talks about these products to so many people daily almost, to watch the products not only progress, but the product lines get bigger. And we're going to dig into all of that in our conversation today. But let's start with just kind of the base unit, the Ripple itself, the magic powder, as it were. In a layperson's terms, or in layperson's terminology, how does it work? What's the science behind it? Why can't I take, let's say, a bucket, a gram of crystallate, and just throw that on top of a piece of pizza, or mix that into my coffee, and have that work in the same way that Ripple does, that it just dissolves in my water and my beverage?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the base chemistry is just the reality that oil and water don't mix.
Oh.
So the fact that pretty much all of your cannabinoids are oil soluble, you kind of have to do some magic to be able to make it mix in with something like a beverage. And kind of the easiest way to think about it is if you think of like your standard vinaigrette dressing.
Sure.
It's like you have your oil layer on the top, and then you have the water layer below. You give it a nice shake before you use it to make it all mixed up. But obviously by the time you go back to use it next, the oil separates out very fast.
Right.
Whereas like a creamy vinaigrette, where everything is all together and combined, essentially the only difference there is that an egg is added, which is one of nature's best or most natural emulsifiers. And that essentially traps those fat droplets and keeps them really small. So essentially you're suspending these fat droplets within the liquid. And so for Ripple, what we take is we take our distillates and other extracts for cannabinoids and dissolve that into either a carrier oil if necessary. And then we essentially break those fat droplets up into really, really small droplets and then keep them captured in that size. Wow. So with the Ripple, you're essentially forming a film around the fat droplets, and then you're making them really small, and then you're drying it into the powder form so that it kind of stays that way. And then when you take that Ripple powder and you dissolve it into your water, you'll see the cloudiness form. And what that cloudiness really is just thousands upon thousands of really small fat droplets. Wow. That are now just suspended within your water.
Wow. This is going to be a weird question, maybe, but in each granule of Ripple, how many of those fat droplets or how many of those molecules are in there? Do you know?
it's one of those things that's kind of tough. Like you can't really count it.
Sure.
But we do have some fancy equipment here where we can actually measure, we refer to it as a particle size analyzer. It's kind of some fancy sci-fi technology in that it uses lasers, and the lasers essentially shoot through the fat droplets, and then it bounces off and diffracts in various ways, and then it captures that information, and it really tells you the actual size of the fat droplets. And for our products, we're down in like the nanometer size range. So you're talking about the fact you couldn't even take a microscope unless you had a really, really fancy, nice one to be able to see these droplets. And because they're so small, that's what keeps them suspended within a beverage for multiple days. So it's definitely something we look pretty intensely at. And one of the cool things that I didn't really know coming into the job is when I first talked with Keith and them, like, oh yeah, like this makes sense. Like, you can't make cannabis beverages without this type of technology. And then one of the really cool things we've learned a lot since then is it actually changes the way that it's absorbed by your body. Wow. So by having these really small fat droplets, a lot of it is actually like passively diffused through your small intestine. So that's how you get the faster onset. And that you're starting to feel the product within your body within 15 minutes. And we've actually done some human clinical trials at Colorado State University to really measure these factors. So we've done some human trials to kind of see, is it truly within your body that fast? And what's really cool is the results that we've gotten, and a lot of the studies right now have been mainly focused on CBD-only products, our caliper line of products, because obviously getting THC tested at a university has its own kind of red tape and bureaucracy to get through. And what's really cool is you get the faster onset of the product within 15 minutes, and we saw that consistently across all the human participants. But you even get a higher absorption rate, so your body's actually taking in more of the cannabinoids than you're normally using. And that's especially important for something like CBD, where in its normal oil state, your body's really only able to absorb roughly 6 to 12% of those cannabinoids.
And so everything else is left on the table. You're wasting cannabinoids.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like getting a better bang for your buck, and that you're able to absorb more. And we had a lot of anecdotal evidence from consumers in the early days of Ripple before we could really afford to do these studies.
Sure.
So it's one of those things that's really cool is that we've been able to validate this with true research using human trials, and have seen the faster onset and a much higher absorption rate. And we're looking at potentially doing a similar study for THC products. Like I mentioned, it's a little harder to execute those with the university level, just based on having THC in there. But definitely that's something I'm super excited about, and something that makes me really proud to work for the company, and that all the type of claims you see on our packaging on our websites are stuff that we backed up with actual human studies. That's
what I love about your company is the transparency, and even your candor in our conversation today. You know, like we didn't really know, and we had anecdotal, but now we have real qualitative and quantitative information to back up our anecdotal kind of questions and what we knew or what we thought to be true in the early days. And that's, it's one of the things that I really, really appreciate about not only your products, because your products are kind of come from that wellness and come from that good place, but it's certainly about your team and everything else around. You're not making these big, bold claims that this is going to do this and this is going to do this. And I really like that. And I want to ask you this too. I know that we're a little ways out from you to being able to get the same kind of results with THC because of the political goofiness that surrounds that molecule and that cannabinoid. But with the way that you create the Ripple powder and the way you encapsulate it and the emulsifiers, do CBD and THC behave the same? Do all cannabinoids behave the same in the extraction process and the way that you make Ripple, or do you have to change the process? When you do like a 1-to-1 or a 40-to-1?
Yeah, fortunately, from what we've seen as far as the actual emulsification properties of our actual process of making these products, we've worked across a variety of cannabinoids now, especially on our CBD side, where we've done some broad spectrum distillates where you have really high levels of CBN, CBC. We've worked pretty heavily with CBG as of more recently.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the technology, as far as emulsifying it, works great across all of them. Main factor you need to change is really like a distillate for THC, where obviously you can't isolate THC and have kind of the nice pure powder form that you have for a CBD isolate.
Sure.
You just have to dissolve that down into a carrier oil, and for us, we use coconut-derived MCT oil, which is another factor that helps it be absorbed by your body really well, since that's already fast absorbed in and of itself.
Sure.
Fortunately, the technology itself works really well as far as making the products. As far as what that does in your body and all of that, we would expect to see similar trends as far as having the faster absorption and higher absorption amounts, but it's something that we haven't quantified yet. So something I won't speak too much to.
Sure.
But definitely cool that we're able to work across all these products. Obviously, rare cannabinoids and some of those minor cannabinoids have definitely become more popular. And in our eyes as a company, we definitely see a lot of future and potential in that. And really seeing cannabinoids as a new class of functional ingredients for the food and beverage world, which is awesome.
Yeah, and we're seeing the same thing in practice in the real world too. We're seeing a society that is getting information on CBC, CBG, THCV, and some of these, like you said, lesser known cannabinoids and the therapeutic potential that is kind of locked in them. And as companies like you push forward the tech and the understanding behind these cannabinoids and the way that they work and the way they respond to different extraction processes and different applications, it unlocks so many mysteries, and the excitement is palpable. Not only with your team to unlock those mysteries, but what those mysteries mean for the people that come see me daily to get whether it's to uplift or sedate or feel better or just relax, and there's so much there that that's super exciting to me, and I think I know the answer to this just based on the conversation that we've had so far. But one of the great things about Ripple is that there's no taste to it, or there's not that it doesn't have that hashy taste that so many edibles have. Even a pressed pill. I'll have a pressed pill that has the active cannabinoids in it. And I'll, sometimes I'll burp that up, not to be gross and gross everybody out. But it's hard to get that taste, that cannabis taste, that weed or hashy taste to go away. How did you guys manage to do that?
Yeah, definitely. It's a tricky challenge that we're always looking at. For us, we're not vertically integrated, so we don't grow any hemp or marijuana ourselves. We don't own any extraction equipment. So really, the approach that we've taken is just working really closely with a select few extractors that have really locked in the technology in a good way. We definitely asked them to kind of do some extra steps to knock out as many of the terpenes and flavor profiles as possible, knowing that if we want to add that back in later on, we always can.
Right.
So it's really working with the extraction companies and helping them perfect their technology, and then making sure that it's suitable in our product. So every batch of distillate that we have coming to our door gets screened for sensory testing, make sure that it kind of meets the profile that we're looking for. We definitely have to occasionally have some hard conversations on saying, hey, this isn't quite as good as we need it to be. Like, what else can you do? But it's really working at that level. There's also in the flavor world, you have some kind of pretty advanced compounds that kind of work as bitter maskers and can kind of modify flavor properties of a variety of food products, including like the bitterness of CBD is definitely a challenge with working with CBD in general, especially as the doses of CBD continue to increase. The bitterness is tough, and that's one of those things that you can have a great tasting product, but if the bitterness is rough, people aren't going to be a repeat purchaser. So it's really working with the extraction level and then working with what we can control on our end with bitter maskers and other compounds.
Bitter maskers, flavors, these really speak to the quick sticks, and we'll get into the quick sticks in just a minute. But I want to go back to that base, that Ripple that kind of powers all of the products in the entire Ripple line, whether it's the Ripple gummies or those quick sticks. Is there anything that you can't or shouldn't? And this was just asked to me just the other day. Is there anything that you can't or shouldn't add Ripple to?
I can't really think of a good example. It's fortunately, especially their base Ripple, you can really add it to anything.
Awesome.
I'd say especially if there's a little bit of water, that if any liquid, essentially, it'll go in really cleanly. If you're mixing it with something really thick, you might just need to mix it a little bit longer or harder to really get it fully dispersed and evenly throughout the product. But yeah, it's really the magic of Ripple is you can turn anything into an edible, which is awesome.
And in a time, and I don't think it's any real secret to anybody, but when you go into a dispensary, a lot of times you see the orally consumable cannabis products, you see sweets, and that's it. All you see is sweets. And so we get people asking us all the time, where are the savory products? Where can I find? I don't have a sweet tooth. I don't want a candy bar or chocolate or a gummy. What I'm looking for is something savory. And Ripple allows you to kind of have that, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of easier to mix into your regular routine. You don't have to drink a special beverage or eat a special snack that you wouldn't otherwise consume. Definitely one of the most consistent feedback we get is everyone just likes adding it to their coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
Especially the higher CBD products. And so it's one of the things you can fit into your daily routine in a very easy manner, as well as having the different dose levels. That's definitely something that our CEO, Justin Singer, was one of the main priorities in starting the company. Is he found the same thing. Did some some chronically ill grandparents and was trying to get them some help.
Got it.
And all I could find was brownies.
Yep.
And essentially that wasn't going to work for what they were able to consume, and also only in 10 milligram dose per piece.
That's a lot.
So we don't provide lower dose options for everyone. Obviously, we have our heavyweights that will consume multiple 10 milligram THC packets.
Right.
And then you have the other people that love, like for me, I really like the green tea mango gummies because it's only 2.5 milligrams THC, 2.5 milligrams CBD. You can eat more if you want more, or you can just kind of stick it out with one. So
I
feel like the options that we have from a dosage perspective.
I've heard so many endorsements from people, especially about those green tea mango gummies. I've heard it described as the best edible in the state of Colorado numerous times, more times than I can count. So the magic is there, and it's coming through. And it speaks to your team kind of on the backside of Ripple and the chefs and the people that are putting all these flavors together and these products together. And it speaks to the power of Ripple too, and one thing that Nikki and I talked about a couple of weeks ago is that the kind of impetus or the idea for these quick sticks that came out is really about to backbones on what you were talking about just a moment ago with the I just like to have this in my bag or my purse, and sometimes I don't have a cup of coffee to put my Ripple in, but I really like Ripple, and I wanted the ability to have this product but not necessarily just put the powder on my tongue. So I wanted it to be a little more enjoyable if I was going to be somewhere where I couldn't mix it in with my hot coffee.
Yeah, definitely. That was really the goal with Quick Sticks is Ripple being out in the market for so long is we definitely like to engage with our consumers and figure out what they like and don't like. And I remember it was kind of surprising a few years in, everyone's like, yeah, we have like a pretty high percentage of our consumers that just rip the packets up and pour them straight in their mouth.
Sure.
And I'm guilty of that myself even before I joined the company. That's how I almost always consumed Ripple.
Sure.
Because it's just the most convenient way to do it. And so the goal essentially with Quick Sticks is, all right, like if that many people are doing it, why don't we play into that and make it a more enjoyable experience, add a little bit of flavor. And so that even the minimal flavor that is there from the hash and a small bat, you're just making it a more enjoyable experience. And I was really fortunate to be the lead person on that project and do all the flavor work, which is something I'm super passionate about. It's awesome to get back there and to start mixing flavors up and see what works and what doesn't.
Fun.
So definitely a product I'm pretty proud of.
Can I ask you, were there any flavors that got left on the cutting room floor? They just were gross or they didn't work? Like pepperoni pizza. Did you flirt with that one? Or tacos?
I didn't get too weird with it. I had a pretty short timeline to work on the flavor work.
Sure.
Kind of stayed conservative, worked with fruit flavors. Some different mint flavors were a lot of fun. And it's an awesome project in that we had a lot of flavors. We had more flavors that we liked than we didn't like. So there's
so it was like a Sophie's Choice. Which gets to stay?
Exactly. So my goal, or like the way the project was oriented, is let's narrow it down to our top 6 flavors, and then we let everyone in our company vote on those top 6 flavors. We had a couple of bud tender events and some industry events to get feedback from everyone else. And the feedback was positive across all 6. So then it was kind of the internal choice of like, all right, which 3 do we actually want to use?
Right.
And now it's great because we kind of had start on eventually doing future flavors for that.
Now I was going to ask you. So you had 6 that you really narrowed down to. Are we going to see the remainder of those kind of pop up anytime soon?
I don't know about super soon, but definitely in the works. And I got clarity from our marketing team on what I can and can't say for new products. Essentially, I can say that we're working on new flavors across multiple products. And definitely some exciting ones, kind of a little more focused on our high THC SKUs, since those are kind of the top selling ones.
Sure.
And you can expect to see some stuff before the end of the year.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for that hot news. Let me ask you this: is there any, besides the flavor, since we're talking about flavor,
Sure.
Is there any difference between Quick Sticks and OG Ripple other than those flavor components?
No, like the technology is the same. We pretty much use the base Ripple as an ingredient, and then we're just adding extra stuff in there. The flavors, a little bit of like citric acid is necessary for the fruit flavors to make those taste proper. We added a little bit extra sweetness to make sure that the flavors themselves come out a little bit better, especially with the regular Ripple, kind of being the goal with those being flavor-free, low sweetness. The flavors just don't taste right without having a little extra sweetness in there.
Sure.
So that's really the thing that I was working on is balancing a little additional sweetness to get the flavor profile where we want it to be.
That makes a lot of sense. And you know, I guess if I was making a cup of coffee, I don't think that chocolate mint coffee sucks. I think that might be a good idea. So have you used any of the Quick Sticks as a dissolvable in any liquids?
Yeah, so I mean, we assumed that there was definitely going to be a portion of our consumers that we're going to end up pouring it in water one way or another.
Sure.
The flavor levels and all that, you'll find once you dilute it down with coffee or water, the flavor's not very strong, so it's more of a hint of flavor at that point.
Sure.
Which some people still prefer, especially to your coffee analogy, like if you just want a little added mint flavor. But we definitely made sure that all the flavors and ingredients we were using that were added in still dissolved in water, so that those kind of people can still get that experience.
You thought of everything. You thought of everything. Now I just need to make sure that we thought to make sure that we had blood orange gummies, so that I could go grab a couple of those today. I want to make sure I get those in my possession. If someone is watching this and thinking to themselves, well, Drew's story is very similar to my own, or there's someone out there, I think in this industry, and when we talk to people kind of outside the industry, everyone knows how to get in the door with bud tending or kind of on the retail or public facing side of things. If anyone's out there and wanting to get in the door, the back door, as it were, to the way that these products are being produced, and what would you give them as advice? What should we study in school? Are there degrees that are helpful? How do I get my foot in the door to be a cannabis scientist?
Yeah, sure. I kind of talked from my own experience in that I kind of was now kind of the more traditional route for getting into the food industry. I went to college for food science was my degree. So there's a number of large universities that offer that now. It's a great option to really learn about all the ins and outs of the food manufacturing world, whether it's quality aspects, product development aspects, even the mass manufacturing aspect, super important. And from those jobs, it's easier to get into, or with that education, it's easier to get in the edible industry. Especially a company like Ripple and Stillwater, the company behind Ripple, we treat ourselves like a food company.
Sure.
We just happen to specialize in cannabinoids. So a lot of the people here on our research and development team and throughout the company kind of come from the traditional food industry. So that's definitely how we've approached things here. It's definitely super cool to see, since I've left college, how multiple universities are offering cannabis-specific programs. And whether it's for the growing aspect, the extraction aspect, I think that's awesome. I think it's definitely something we'll continue to see more of. So I think if you want to get in that route, those options are there. And then just like anything else, don't be afraid to reach out and kind of see if you can at least get an internship, an apprenticeship. Just gotta get your foot in the door. Just like anything else, marketing and who you know is a big aspect of it.
Sure.
So it's kind of all about who you know, but you can't be scared to kind of take the first step. For me, watching Ripple from afar, it took me a while to take the confidence to say, hey, like, I think I can help you guys,
right.
And I hope you feel the same. Unfortunately, it's really worked out for me, so I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, take some risks, my friend. Take some risks, my friends out there.
No, until you don't try, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Was it Yogi Berra that said or Wayne Gretzky said that you miss every shot you don't take, right?
Yep.
Not just a fun colloquialism, actual truth there. Well, Drew, I know there's a lot going on in your Mad Lab, and so I want to make sure you get back to that. For my friends out there, follow Ripple on all of their socials. You've got Twitter, Instagram. What am I missing? Facebook. What am I missing, Drew?
I think those are the main ones. The main ones I can think of, but Nick, you would know better than I am since I'm just a scientist.
There's no such thing as just a scientist, Drew. The work that you do is super important, and it makes those gummies so delectable and Ripple so versatile and effective. I could do another 20 minutes on the efficacy of Ripple. My personal endorsement. I love these products. They work for me. The fast onset time of effects is there. I can give you my anecdotal experience too. Everything that I've tried from this company follows along with everything that Drew said. So Drew, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. And we'll see you out there in the big wide world of cannabis.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Tony.